Yeah, maybe just a couple of words on why we planned this panel discussion. It's a first for us as well. But we think that if you open up the news at the moment, if you read any papers, anything, everybody's talking about raising cost of living, the recession coming. There's a lot of press coverage of how difficult the situation is. And probably if you're working in NGOs, you've already noticed that a lot of private donations are down, and the situation is just a little bit difficult to get a handle on. So we thought today we want to talk about a little bit about the effects of the recession on fundraising, on NGOs, but also what does that mean for foundations? What does that mean for fundraising trends in 2023? And what you can do to kind of prepare your NGO a little bit to deal with the current situation. And this is the highlight of this month of classes that we ran. I think many of you took part in our webinars and our classes about proposal writing. So we've looked at the issue from many different angles. And today we want to give you an outlook on what we think might happen in 2023. We don't have a magic ball either, so that we can see the future, but we have some ideas about trends that might define the next year. And we'll talk about different aspects of the problem. But yeah, maybe Eric, you can get started with some of the main trends with fundraising from foundations and maybe institutional donors that you think will be important in the coming years, or in the coming year, not years probably as well, but mainly in 2023.
Yes, thank you, Eva, and that's a great introduction. I think over the past couple of years, we've seen a lot of volatility, a lot of change, and a lot of unexpected things happening. And the big thing on the agenda, of course, was COVID. And COVID really had quite a significant impact on the world, and is still having a big impact on the world. Just look at China, for example, and also has had a great impact on the economic outlook. Looking forward over the next few years. And there's lots and lots of reasons for that. Now, COVID in most of the world is on the way out, or at least it's here to stay. It's endemic, but I recently had COVID. It was like a common cold, and I've been vaccinated. I had no clue it was COVID until I got tested. I thought, oh, I just have a cold. So it's shifting, it's changing. So I think. But the impact of COVID and the impact on the world economy, and also in how we fundraise and do our NGO, philanthropic day-to-day work is here to stay for the foreseeable future. Now, when I look back over the past 2 years, and it's not just COVID, of course, the war in Ukraine has had a massive impact, and there's many, many other things going on in the world today. Now, when I look at, just to backtrack a little bit, the impact of COVID at that time, and I think if you followed some of our webinars and trainings and some of our live sessions, you have heard about this before. But in the beginning, early 2020, we all thought it would be very difficult to fundraise, that giving would go down significantly, both individual giving, people making donations to charities or NGOs, right? But also foundations, governments, etc. And actually the exact opposite happened. We saw, and we have the statistics to back that up from the United States, from the UK. I know Eva is based in Germany, and she's been speaking with many foundations and German NGOs, and all the indications and the statistics show that giving has gone up across the board in most of the world in the past 2 years. So so this is a good thing, but now we are presented with the bill. The bill's coming due of all this, of course, economic kind of disruption, supply chains, the war in Ukraine that is causing gas prices to go up, etc., and the massive amounts of money that governments have introduced into their economies to try and prop up businesses and keep employment high, etc. And in the United States, it was several $1 trillion, for example. And this is government being printed by, or funding government money being printed by the treasury there, and the Europe, etc. The same thing happened. So what you will see now, and all the indications are there, that we're going to have a recession. And in some countries, this is already, the UK, for example, this is already extremely noticeable. In other countries, it's lagging, but everybody's getting prepared for it. Now, the question today is what, and this is the big trend we want to highlight today, but there's certain other trends going on at the same time. And I think if there are questions, you know, we can, Eva and myself can talk about those. But fundraising in a recession. What do we do to prepare? Because we're probably going into a recession, and it depends a little bit on where you live, what your situation is, etc. But most of the NGOs I talk to and UN agencies, etc., that we help there, they see this on the horizon, and the early indications all are here. And so what can we do? How do we prepare? And this is something I think Eva and I will try to highlight today. And if you have questions or comments about that, then I would be very interested to know. Eva, maybe before I start, and let me apologize for the technical difficulties in the beginning. We're using webinar mode, and sometimes we're on Zoom mode or Facebook Live, and it's always a little bit different. But you can see we're on live, and that's how that goes. And hopefully it didn't disrupt you too much. Now, Eva, when it comes to kind of an economic downturn, do you have a suggestion, a quick kind of thing that maybe NGOs should be doing to try and mitigate, you know, certain donors dropping out, or maybe grants not being so easily available anymore? What are your thoughts on that?
I definitely think it's a challenging situation coming up for many organizations. But what will be more important in the future, I think, and this is something you can do right now, is the connections and the relationships that you have. And that's something that we saw in COVID as well, because especially in the beginning, funding dropped a bit because foundations, all donors were in like a holding mode. But those who had relationships and those who had good relationships with their donors, and it doesn't matter if that's the foundation, another institutional donor, or even individual donors, they were the ones that still got the support. And I think that is going to be true in the future as well, because the better connections you have and the more, like, let's say it's a foundation, if they already know you as a good partner and they know that you are able to implement projects and that you're doing great work and that you have a good standing in the community, etc., they will be much more likely to keep supporting you. I think what will get more difficult in the future is kind of cold calls, like to acquire new donors, because they will probably focus more on the ones that they're already working with. And that doesn't mean that you need to have grants from them right now, but just to extend your network and start doing that now. Don't start when it's already too late, but start reaching out, explaining about your work, and extending your network. I think that's one thing that will be very important. The other thing, and that's also something that we've seen with COVID, is how adaptable your strategy is. And that is something that you can also work on right now. We've seen all those organizations that were not able to adapt and pivot quickly. They had big issues in COVID, and they will have big issues now, because maybe maybe your strategy says you have a budget of $1 million or 100,000, whatever your budget size might be. If you are like stubborn, sticking to that and say we can only work with this budget, and then if you don't get it, you don't know what to do, then that's going to be a problem. But if you've already kind of installed a different approach to this, if you know how to deal with this, if you have an alternative way to go, well, if this doesn't work out, if we're losing this donor, we can still do ABC and still continue with our work. If you already start planning for that, you will be one of the quicker ones to adjust if something really happens, if a donor drops out, etc. And that's also something, when you show that to your partners now, that you're already planning for things that you see on the horizon, that might happen, that your approach is very flexible. That is always a plus when you apply for funding, when you talk to anyone, because that's what is needed in today's world. Things, like Eric said, things change so much and at a level that 5 years ago nobody could imagine. So we need to take those experiences and learn from that, and approach our work in a more flexible way, because the better prepared you are, the better you're going to be able to deal with this. And then one last thing before I also let Eric talk, sorry, is when you also work with individual donors, what data has shown, like there were some reports in the UK where the recession already hit, especially private people, like single persons who might donate. It all said that the connection is super important. So things like social media, reaching out, informing about your work, but also that in these times, online donations are growing much quicker and much more than like face-to-face fundraising, all this stuff, and sending money through the bank. And this is a trend that has already been happening for a long time, like digitalization and using all those tools. But this is kind of turbocharging right now. People say that in a couple of years, probably 50% of personal donations will come through online tools, because the people that still write a check and go to the bank, they are mostly older people, and they won't be doing that in the future for different reasons. So you have to focus, and you have to start focusing on those different channels and build them up for you, because it's not so easy. It's nothing that you can do like from 1 minute to the next. So that's also something you can start working on, to set up your entire fundraising or gifts infrastructure, that it can also cater to the needs of younger people, which is often online more. So if you do those things, I think those are steps that you can already start taking now, and it will prepare you for the recession, while at the same time, all these things that I've mentioned, things we always mention anyways, like relationship building, being flexible, being innovative, thinking of new ways, all of that makes a lot of sense anyways. So it will take your entire organization forward, while also helping you to prepare for things like this recession or any other challenges coming your way.
Yeah, those are great points. And I think when you talk about different channels, that's a very important point, because one of the ways to protect yourself from a sudden drop in income, you know, grant income or donations, and to protect yourself from recession or economic volatility as well, is to have a diverse donor base. Not to rely for 50% of your budget, for example, on just one donor. Because if that one donor drops out, let's say it's a big foundation or an embassy or a government, then all of a sudden 50% of your budget is gone, and that could completely destroy your NGO or your organization. So it's very important to have a diverse funding base with different kind of income streams, they call that, with different channels of income. Now, if I have 5 different foundations, 3 governments, individuals, corporate support through their CSR programs or what have you, and I have let's say a stable or a range of 15, 20 different income sources. So people providing, oh, sorry about that. People providing grants and donations, then if 1 or 2 drop out or reduce their giving year over year, then I still have a lot of leeway. My budget is not going to drop by 50%. It may drop by 5% or 10%. And usually, like Eva just explained, if there is a small drop, you can go to some of the other donors and say, listen, we're in a bit of a pickle. We have a bit of a problem. This donor just reduced, one of our donors just reduced their giving by 10% or 20%, and we need to fill that gap. And then you have opportunities with these others to maybe fill that gap and to keep your budget stable, and maybe even increase it. Because going back to existing donors is always easier than trying to attract new donors. But having said that, when we look at the history of philanthropy, of giving from foundations, corporates, individuals, etc., in different countries, we see, and in the United States, and I mentioned this in some of the training webinars as well, the courses, when we go back like 100 years, giving typically goes up year over year over year, with some drops. When there is a big worldwide recession, then you may see drops, but the amount of money being given to NGOs and you know, for charitable purposes around the world is so massive. We're talking hundreds of billions. In the United States alone, it's $500 billion, 500 billion US dollars. And that does not include any government subsidies or grants, you know, USAID or depending on what you know about. So the amounts are massive. So there will always be an opportunity for you to find a donor willing to fund you. And I think, and there was this famous soccer player or football player, depending on where you live, in the Netherlands, that's Johan Cruyff, who said every negative has a positive. Every disadvantage, for every disadvantage on the soccer pitch, I can find an advantage. If something goes wrong, I find the alternative that will help me move forward and score the goal. And in the World Cup frame of mind, I'm using that one. But economic recession for some NGOs can also create an advantage. It can create an opportunity, because some of the work that you will be doing in education or health or you know, the variety of fields in which you work will be needed maybe more than ever if there is a recession, just like what happened when COVID came around and all of a sudden kids couldn't go to school anymore. Many NGOs picked up on that opportunity and found a way to increase their programming and increase their income streams. So don't be prepared, but don't be afraid. If you are, like Eva said, if you have a plan and you're adaptable and you can strategize around the opportunities that are there, you can succeed. One suggestion there is that there are some sources of funding that are recession-proof. For example, there are companies, and usually that's foodstuffs, you know, paper, you know, the staples of life that everybody always needs to buy. They're pretty recession-proof. And maybe instead of focusing on fundraising from companies that are in social media or Uber or Google's, you know, those that may be under Facebook's, that may be under a lot of pressure because advertising is dropping, right? I've read about that. Maybe focus on companies that are more recession-proof. It's a good idea. There are also foundations that have so much money, Ford Foundation or what have you. They have so many assets, billions and billions in the bank, that they're in a good position when there is a recession to increase their giving. And so be aware of that. Now, lastly, there may be countries, if gas prices are high, you know, liquid gas or oil, then you can be sure that certain countries are doing extremely well, like in the Middle East and the Persian Gulf. And we do have a training on our training portal on how to fundraise from GCC countries, so the Gulf Cooperation countries, from the Middle East and the Persian Gulf. And this may not be an option for all of you, but these countries economically are doing extremely well with these high oil prices. So there is enough money out there, there's always alternatives out there, and you have to just keep on going. And like Eva said, make sure you connect and you build those relationships with the donors that you already have, because they will be the easiest to get some additional funding from. Okay, Eva, what do you think? Should we talk a little bit about related trends, or should we start taking some questions maybe in the meantime?
I wanted to add two things to what you said already. Just came to my mind because last week I had a discussion with someone here who's the leader or the chairwoman of a big foundation in Germany, and she actually said that there are challenges, but at the same time, interest rates are going up. So for the last couple of years, she had big issues to invest the money. There was always, she said that sometimes she was happy to get 2% of interest rate at all, because it was almost impossible. And many foundations were kind of like in a stalemate here, because they couldn't get, they have a lot of money, but they couldn't get the money to work for them because the interest rates were so low and they were not allowed to move into risky investments, etc. But now, at least in Europe, and I think in the US, it's similar. Interest rates, like the fixed interest rates that banks give, are rising again, which obviously has its own challenges because it makes investments for you more expensive as well. But it also means that foundations can create more revenue that they can then, like Eric said, pay out and invest again in programs. And so they can give more grants. And if they have a very, very high volume of money that they can invest that works for them, a change of 1% in interest rate already makes a big difference. And usually most foundations can only give grants from the money that the interest creates. At least that's the rule in Germany. So you can't touch your capital, you can't touch what you put into the bank, just what you get out. So that is raising. So maybe if you see with some people or some of your donors there's issues, maybe talk to a couple of more foundations, because they might be a bit more flexible, like Eric said, and they might have the ability to still give grants in this time. And one more thing that I've also seen, and I think it's a question also that we got beforehand that I thought was interesting, if a reaction to this recession should be to cut cost for NGOs, to kind of become smaller, maybe let people go, etc. And I think here the one thing is the most important thing is to be honest with your donors, because if you received, I know that many of you are already in the situation that you received grant money and you had planned for this project a year ago, but since then prices have sometimes doubled, or at least 30% up, especially if you're building something, building materials, the prices is either you can't get it at all or it's so much more expensive. But instead of trying to cut your project smaller to make it fit into the budget, always talk to donors first, because they are, and it's not like this is just happening to you, it's happening to everyone. So they have a very high understanding for this. And maybe they will tell you, well, we're very sorry, there's no other solutions, make the building smaller, or you have to let someone go, and then you can still think of alternatives. But first be honest and don't try to fix this situation in your team, because that's something we see a lot of times, that NGOs feel like, oh, we signed this contract, we said we will do this, so we'll try at all cost without talking to donors. But they have some flexibility, so just always be open about what's happening in your project, and don't be too quick in cutting down and maybe letting people go, or cutting cost at all sides and angles, because usually that's not good for the quality of your work, and you still want to show quality work in the future.
Yeah, good points. And I think I've seen these issues before. Most donors, they have a goal. They want to solve a problem, right? Be it in water and sanitation, or in education or health or human rights, or whatever the case may be. And they need you. You're there to help them solve the goal or the problem they want to solve, right? And so you're partners. You're not just a donor. It's not like a bank and they want to return in monetary terms. They want to return in terms of having impact in the field. And if because of hyperinflation or economic recession, it becomes challenging to get that impact that you agreed on, then talk to the donor. They want you to spend the money. And in some cases, they will be willing to add additional funding to make sure that the impact is there, and that the beneficiaries, the people you work with, are not impacted so significantly, maybe by a recession or hyperinflation. And I can remember extremely well and this is back in it must have been 1998, 99, somewhere around there, the Asian financial crisis. And I was working with UNICEF at the time, and there was work being done in in Indonesia, and because of the financial crisis, there was a currency crisis. All of a sudden, the rupiah, the Indonesian rupiah, $1 was all of a sudden only worth like 10 cents in Indonesia. So if you had a budget of $10,000 and then the money shows up and you get it, you convert it in rupiah, a year later that money was only worth $1,000 in rupiah, right? So because of currency conversion. And all of a sudden they couldn't do all the things, and that created hyperinflation. And all of a sudden they couldn't do all the things, we as UNICEF, but also others, we couldn't do the things we set out to do. Now, what you do in those cases is you go back and you discuss with the donor. You don't just start cutting left and right, but you explain the situation. And I think in many cases where you connect with the donor, you explain the challenges, they will be understanding. Not in all cases, but in many cases. And I think connecting with donors and being adaptable, and Eva also mentioned that several times before in your strategy, is very important. A donor is not there to give you money and then to get a report 12 months later or 2 years later. A donor is there as a partner, and of course they provide funding, but at the same time they're more than happy to discuss the challenges that you see, and honesty is excellent. And I see a lot of NGOs and development organizations only go to the donor when it's too late. Go as soon as you can and discuss the issues that may be confronting you, because they will be issues confronting all the other partners that they have as well. They're not going to find that a problem. I do think also being adaptable with donors is important. You're building that relationship, and yeah, so these are very good points, Eva. And if you are, one other point maybe, if you are negotiating, and let's say we're going into recession and you're negotiating a grant with a potential partner, a donor, then one way to create more flexibility is to have multi-year grants. If the donor tells you, hey, let's create a 1-year grant agreement, see if you can extend that, see if you can make it a 2-year grant agreement. If you can double the money, perhaps, but do it over 2 years, or if you can build in some flexibility in the grant agreement, because I think multi-year funding will provide stability, and multi-year funding does not mean you cannot go back to that same donor and ask for more money 6 months or a year later. It just means you have a longer runway, a longer time horizon to spend that grant funding, and you can always spend it quicker. You can always spend it faster and go back for more. So that's a good idea. The other thing is when we're going into this, these challenging times economically, for example, then it's good to talk with the donor and really get a grip on how flexible that donor is in making changes. I know some donors are willing to put some money in the budget for contingencies. Some donors are very happy to change budget lines. So let's say, okay, you were going to buy a vehicle, and now that money is going to be used to pay for staffing costs instead. There is often a lot of flexibility there, but some donors are not flexible at all. They're very, very rigid, and you have to stick to the budget as you negotiated it. So make sure you understand what the rules are, ask them, and see how you can negotiate additional flexibility in your budget to deal with these challenges and to mitigate with what comes in the future and to be prepared. Eva, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. So if you have questions, you can put them. I see that you're all chatting in the chat box, which is amazing. And I'm seeing that so many people from all over the world joined us. This is really great. We have this Q&A box as well, where you can put questions. And there's a couple of questions already about specific donors, like which donors have a call for Syria, which ones have for India or the Persian Gulf. We always get these questions, like tell us a donor for this region. And what we can always only revert back to is that donor research, prospect research is extremely important, and that is a skill that you kind of have to develop within your organization, because obviously at the top of our head, we can't just tell you all the best donors for your cause, because that needs a lot of research. But I think this is closely connected to the current situation, that you really have to invest a bit more time in the research process, because even in the perfect world, it is extremely important that you find that donor that has the same mission, that wants to achieve the same things as you do. So you can start a partnership and you can say, look, we can help you to achieve your mission because it's the same or it's very similar. That's always crucial. But right now it's even more important, because maybe donors will be a little bit more careful on how to choose. So the importance of you being able to show where you overlap and where your work would support theirs is even more important. And I would even extend that a little bit to the process where you kind of decide what your target group is, or what kind of fundraising instruments you want to use. Because we said before, foundations might be a good partner in the future, because they might still have all those resources. For example, something that stuck out to me during COVID, and it's still the case, is before COVID, all the airlines had big corporate CSR programs where you could always apply with an airline, like with Lufthansa, and they would give you a lot of money because they had a lot of money. They don't anymore. So you really need to do that research, because if you write to Lufthansa right now, please give us money for this project in somewhere in Asia, they will say, well, we don't have money to pay our pilots, so why would we? So you have to do that research and really figure out which companies you want to talk to, which kinds of donors you want to talk to. Is it foundations? Is it companies, if you decide that? And then again, which companies? Like Eric said, there's a couple of companies that have grown and are still growing and are benefiting from the crisis, from the recession, whatever you want to call it. They might be good partners, especially the software companies often are growing so quickly that they have a lot of cash available, and they're also still developing their CSR programs. So that's a very good point in time to contact them and to become a partner, because if you can even influence the way they set up their CSR programs, because they're just developing this, because often they are startups and just growing very quickly in this time, the better your chances to make sure that they want to fund your work. No? So there's even more chances in that field. But also, if you talk about individual donations, for example, currently I'm working in a campaign for a big German NGO, and it's the Christmas campaign, and we work in cooperation with a newspaper. And everybody beforehand said, well, no, this is not going to be successful. We will have half of what we had last year. This is going to tank because nobody has money. Everybody's stressed. But we thought about this before, and because this newspaper's target audience is older, they're mostly older people in a very rich area of Germany. This campaign is going almost as well as, not last year, because last year was an exception, but the year before. The last year was amazing in individual donations, because everybody had money, because nobody was able to spend it throughout the year. So they gave a lot. But it's the benchmark is 2020, and it's almost the same, because they chose the right target group. If they would have just distributed to everyone like they usually do, they would probably not be that successful. And that again tells you how important the research part is. And even like one step before you decide you want to fundraise from institutional donors, you have to decide which instruments you want to use and which potential donors are the most, have the highest probability to be able to give at the moment. And really look into this, do extensive research before you reach out to understand the person who's talking to you and understand their background and their standing in this recession.
Yeah, good points. And I think when we talk about which donors are good for Syria or human rights or WASH or India, I can tell you I think by my estimate, there's more than 400,000 foundations and trusts in the world. There's millions and millions of companies with CSR programs. There are hundreds of government subsidies, bilateral subsidies, embassies providing funding, etc. And then individuals, well, I think, where are we? At well over 8 billion. We're closing in on 9 billion people in the world. and many of them do give, in developing countries as well. So we cannot tell you, oh, those 5 are great for you, but we have some great resources on the training portal. There's one free course which I run, and it's only 10 or 15 minutes long, but how to find 50 great donors in 10 minutes. And so I would take a look at that. And it's very simple, but there are techniques that you can use to find great donors in a very short amount of time. And donor research is ongoing, mapping out donors and trying to find good donors for your cause and your NGO for your country. But by doing a couple of simple things, you can easily make a pretty good list already. I use this technique, Eva uses these techniques, and you can use those techniques. And the way we present it is in a form that it's not rocket science. It's simple, it's straightforward. You can use those techniques. Then we had a question on the shrinking of civic space, and it's a very important question because that's a big challenge. It's, of course, we are talking today about the challenge of a coming economic recession, but at the same time, civic space is shrinking, and Amihan is asking about that. And what we mean by civic space is the space in which NGOs, civil society, etc., can work. And if you work in certain areas, maybe primary education or building wells or clean water, maybe it's not very controversial and it's fairly straightforward, and you're still able to do your day-to-day work no matter where you work. But if you're working in human rights, LGBTQ, in gender issues, in issues to do with transparency, democracy, etc., then you may be under extreme pressure. And we see this across the board. We see it in Asia. We see it in Eastern Europe. We see it in Latin America. We see it in Africa, where NGOs are closed down under pressure, or they're no longer allowed to receive funding from abroad. In some cases, these are difficult challenges to overcome, but there are always opportunities because there are many, many donors that are interested in funding organizations that are working in countries that are, if you will, where the government is no longer rights respecting, where the government doesn't want, they want to be all powerful. They don't want any civil society. They don't want any NGOs working. They want to take control of everything. And in those cases, there are typically alternatives, but they're difficult. Many donors, foundations, government donors, the European Commission, etc., will fund if you're not a registered NGO. If you're working in a country where you cannot register, you can often still tap into those funding streams and get grants from those organizations. Some work through proxies. They may work with INGOs. They may work from a neighboring country, etc. So it's a tough one, and I think we don't have enough time to go into detail on that, and it's a whole separate difficult discussion. But maybe we can one of these days we can set something up. We can set up a panel presentation on that. And then I'm just looking at the questions, but I also
I just wanted to add one thing to that. Sorry. That I think like you said, donors are often very flexible in funding if they know about these things. And obviously there's stuff you can read and try to be informed, but many things are not so well known, especially if you're working with a donor who's maybe not like a specialist who has calls that are very open and that maybe doesn't understand exactly what is happening in your country. I just know the example from Nepal, where there's not so much pressure, but it's much more difficult to work with an NGO than with a business, for example, because the registration is so complicated. But many donors who don't know that would never fund, yes, in countries where you can't register. So it's easier because you could just say, I can't register, but in countries where you can, but there's some difficulties with it. If a donor doesn't know that, if nobody told them, quite simply, then they just wouldn't fund a company. They would say, well, you can register as an NGO, so why don't you? We're not funding you. And sometimes we see that NGOs also read through the guidelines, where we keep telling people, read the guidelines, look if you're eligible. And then it says we only fund NGOs. So then they say, oh, we can't apply, and they move on. But here, just talking to donors, lobbying, or maybe that's a word that is a little bit burnt, but advocating for your causes and explaining why the situation is this way and why you're acting in a certain way goes a long way, because that's also what donors depend on, your knowledge from the countries, the communities that you work in, because and that's what Eric said before, they're looking for partners to implement their work, to kind of implement projects that will help them with their mission. And they are looking for partners because they are not in the communities. You are. So one part of fundraising and resource mobilization is also advocating with donors, informing them about things that happen. And you cannot always assume that they understand every single part of these things, especially if they are not a specialized donor. If you, well, in this example of Nepal, if you work with a donor who only funds rural projects in Nepal, okay, you can assume they know the situation. But if you apply with a donor that funds projects worldwide and has had one project in Nepal in the last 20 years, then you cannot assume that they understand the political background and the issues that arise for you. So then you have the role of informing them as well. It will not always be successful, obviously. Sometimes they will still say, well, no, but it's part of the fundraising, of the resource mobilization, to also advocate for your causes, for the approaches you want to use, and to inform about the situation on the ground.
Yeah, those are really important points, and I think especially the one that some NGOs are registering as companies, either consulting companies or because it's just much easier to work that way, and they're providing a service, if you will, and some donors are willing to pay for that service, and the UN is operating under doing that as well, becoming more of a, in some cases, a service provider to governments, for example. Now, Amy was asking about technology. Is it okay to send donors a text message or connect them through social media along with email? And that's a great question, actually. This networking is crucial to having success. Talking to donors, understanding donors, building a relationship is very, very important. But how do you get to connect to a donor? How do you get to talk to them? And we actually have a very good training course on donor networking, and suggest you take a look at it. And we do, in most of the training that we do, and also when we talk about proposal writing, the networking, the engaging with donors, the talking to donors is always front and center, is always important. And we try to highlight that. Now, my suggestion is, ideally, you would want to talk to a donor one-on-one in person. So sitting around the table with a coffee and a cookie, right, or a slice of cake, that would be ideal. That's the perfect way to build a relationship, to ask questions, to get to know each other, etc. But that's nowadays a bit difficult, and technology, like Amy says, it's advanced so quickly, and especially also because of COVID. So my view is, if you can set up a Zoom call, or Teams call, or Google Meets, whatever, that would be great too. It's a good alternative. And texting or connecting over social media or LinkedIn, you know, if you use that, for example, be a bit careful with that. I think ideally, if you want to talk to somebody live one-on-one, it's still a good idea to send an email and say, hey, could we, because in the business, in the donor business, you know, they're sitting usually at an office behind a computer, checking their emails. And of course, they're also using their phones and social media accounts, etc. But I think it's still more or less most accepted to get an email saying, hey, we would love to know more about what you're doing as a donor, and what your priorities are, and what your work is in Uganda, in Amy's case, for example. And how can we, could we set up a Zoom next Thursday at 12 o'clock, or do you have another time that is preferable? We just need 10 minutes. And that would be kind of the usual. I do think with social media, it's a great way to maintain the relationship, to send them stuff, to send them a link on a video, a workshop you did, an interview with somebody you've helped, etc. But as a first means of connecting, it's usually not top of my list. But there may be exceptions. If you can connect with them over email, connect to LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram. It is happening more and more. So if that's the only way to get to connect, obviously, yes, do it. But ideally use the more kind of traditional ways. And phone is always a good one. It's a bit nobody. My children don't talk on the phone anymore. They WhatsApp and they're texting quicker than they can talk almost, I think. But phone is still a great and normal way to connect. You can call a donor, see if you can get somebody on the phone and just introduce yourself and say, hey, I'm just calling to see if we can make an appointment to talk for 10 or 15 minutes. And I don't want to take too much of your time now, but many of them won't take your call, but many I have found will be happy to talk to you. They should be interested in you because you're helping them solve the problem that they've identified they want to solve, right? So, okay, what do you think, Eva? I think there's a few more questions. We have a little bit of time left, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, sorry, no. There's a question, what should one do to maintain a good relationship with the donor, especially if there are issues around trust? I think that's also a very good question because we keep saying like you need to establish those relationships and talk to your former donors, but yeah, how can you actually do that? And I think there's a couple of simple things that you can do, like adding donors to your newsletter, for example, if you have one, so then they will receive like updates about your project, inviting them to join your social media accounts, if you have a Facebook for your organization, for example, or an Instagram, and they can see pictures. But obviously you should always inform them about milestones, and not only when the report is due, but also in between. So when obviously when you send a report, send it on time, write a nice report, do everything that they ask you to do. But if you, for example, have a big opening of a building, a school, then inform them and invite them. Or if you ran a very successful workshop and it's not time for reporting, still tell them, oh, we had a 90%, 95% attendance rate, and they were all so happy. And here's a picture of them having their lunch, and something that is relatable. Because what you want is that the donors feel something, ideally, when they look at those pictures and they read your material, because that way you will stick with them and the project will do something for them, make them feel a positive emotion. And when you manage to be connected to positive emotion with anybody, then they will remember you better, they will think about you more favorably, etc. So just try to establish that connection, and then also keep doing that when the grant runs out, because the donors are very happy when they get an email a year after completion of the project saying, look, this is happening. You gave us the money for all these plants, and now the trees have grown and they are this big. That's very nice. And donors keep reflecting that this is an amazing way to keep in touch. Also, there were a couple of questions in the chat about how can we get funding for this, or there's no funding for this. And keeping in touch with donors and talking with them about the issues that you see arising in your communities, like we said before, advocating is a way to keep in touch, is a way to keep that relationship going, and is also a way to influence future funding. Maybe they will then not necessarily fund you, but they will maybe fund someone who's working in that area because you were able to explain to them that this issue is actually an issue. So those conversations go a long way. And I know, for example, that many foundations in Germany, or many NGOs actually in Germany, they run like a monthly talk, like a round table, where they invite 1 or 2 foundations, 1 or 2 people from their projects, and then they just discuss and talk about issues in the field. Obviously, that's like larger scale, but you could try something like that. If you have several projects, if you have interesting things to share, you could try something like that, because donors are always looking for innovative ways of dealing with issues, and you have all the knowledge for that. So those would be, the top of my head, some things that can help you to keep in touch.
Yeah, in fundraising, and that ties into building trust, people give to people. And donors are not machines, or it's not artificial intelligence. It's not a computer making a decision, although maybe one day we'll see something more like that. But it's people giving to people. And of course, they have rules, regulations, there's some bureaucracy involved sometimes, if it's a foundation, of course, or a government or a company. With individuals, it's more about emotion. But if you talk about the more institutional donors, there's still people there making decisions. And it is always a great idea to build a relationship. And you don't have to be best friends, that's not the point. But you do want to showcase what you're doing, who you are helping. You want to show the donor how enthusiastic you are. And also you want to, by building, if you want to build trust, and you should, of course, you want to make sure that you are honest, transparent, open. That if there is a challenge, and challenges happen all over the place all the time. It's not, I've seen it with many organizations I have worked with, that all of a sudden money was not spent properly, or that a project that was supposed to happen didn't take place because of one reason or another. Don't hide it. Just go to the donor and explain it. And almost all donors, if you're transparent, open, and honest, will fully accept and will be there for you, will help you, will partner as a partner to work through it. But if you hold back and you let it continue, then all of a sudden it may be too late to build, to repair that to keep that relationship a healthy one. And the people are people, like in regular relationships and friendships. It's, trust is important. Now, one other thing about trust, because there are a lot of people around the world that say, oh, NGOs, they're not doing it, they're just wasting money, and they're just using the money for themselves, or there are negative stereotypes. Now, I don't agree at all with those stereotypes. I think nearly all the NGOs I've ever worked with are in it to fight the good fight, to do the right thing, to help people, to improve the world, etc. And that's why we're here also, and that's why we have the training portal and all the other proposals for NGOs and all the other things we do to make sure that we can support you in doing the great work that you're doing. Now, most donors trust NGOs, that otherwise they would not be able to work. But with trust comes responsibility, and I think your NGO should make sure that you have capacity in just the basic nuts and bolts of running an NGO. The finances should be in order. You should have a proper accountant making sure that the receipts are all there, that it's all done in an orderly way. So when a donor is asking for a financial report, that you can quickly show them, okay, we spent the money like this and this and that. If that part of it is chaotic and you don't wish to spend money on it, you kind of are reducing cost in that area, just the basic organizational requirements, then that can lead to problems, and problems can lead to the trust being broken. So make sure you invest in your fundraising, in your reporting, in your accounting, financial systems, and in monitoring and evaluation, making sure you can figure out what the impact has been. So, but trust is important, and it's a mutual street. You should be able to trust the donor as well. They should also have responsibilities for that. So thanks for those questions. Those were great. Eva, I think we're almost close to wrapping up, or
yeah, I think so too. There's a couple of more questions about specific donors. Like we said, we can't really tell you these are the 5 ones for you, but like Eric said, we have a free course about donor research that is great. We also have a little bit more extensive one that is a paid version with more information, and you can find all of our courses on philanthropia.org. If you check the website, you see we have, I think it's more than 30 online courses with different focus, funding from USAID, from the European Commission for emergencies, but then also general ones like how to develop the strategy. So if you want to learn more about any of these topics, please check the website and sign up for whichever course you need. And again, the reminder, because I know that many people from Aflatun and SFF are in this group, you have access to the platform, and you should also use it because you can take any of those courses, and they are great, and you can learn a lot from them for your fundraising. And then there's always questions about the specific topics, and this just goes back to like there was one question about how can we get funding for old people in I don't remember which African country it was. Those things are sometimes up for negotiation as well, because often donors will not say we fund one topic, but we fund disadvantaged people or something like that, and that's an entry for a conversation, and then you have a conversation going and you can move from there. So when you do donor research, obviously search for your terms, but don't be too narrow-minded in those terms. Because it's the same for human rights. Sometimes they can be interpreted in a little bit more open way because many things fall under that. So just have open eyes during your research process. And if you have questions to donors, then contact and start that conversation.
Just a housekeeping issue, because some people are asking us, are we going to share the recording? And Eva, we're recording this
is recorded, and you will get a copy, like with all the other courses of the November masterclass. You will receive this through your email. We have your email addresses because you all signed up for this. So don't worry, you will get a copy. And you will also get the newsletter from now if you've just signed up for this. We run monthly webinars on different topics, and I think we will also keep doing this format because I think it's really nice to have a conversation about topics. And obviously, Eric and I, we work together, and we bring our own set of experiences. So I think it's nice to see sometimes two perspectives. They're not completely different, but we can both add from a different side. And I think that's also beneficial for you to answer your questions. So I think we'll also keep with this format. So stay tuned and read our newsletter to make sure that you can sign up for these things and that you find out about them and that you don't miss any of those.
And before we sign off, just a quick note, because Ghana's asking, sometimes on Facebook there are people who call themselves as donors, but they're asking for money before you get the grant. So you have to make a payment before the donor will give you the grant. Well, I can tell you with near certainty that this is a scam, and a typical one. I don't know of any donors. I've only heard of one in my 25 years of working in international development and fundraising, who a legitimate donor asking for money, a payment to be able to apply. And so if any time you see somebody who is asking for a payment, it's a scam. You can be certain of that. You have to be very careful with who you deal with and not to fall for any of those scams. There is no easy money. A proper donor will ask for an application, proposal, concept note, what have you, and will decide on the merits whether or not to fund you. And if they fund you, they will fund you. They will transfer the money to your bank account of the NGO, right? But there are no donors that I know of that will ask for a payment to get funding. It's the oldest scam in the book, so don't fall for it. Okay, thanks, Eva. That's and thanks all for joining. It's been really great.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining. I'm seeing some comments coming in that this was very helpful for you. So I'm really glad that it was. If you find us on Facebook, which you can easily do, you can also leave us a review if you like this format, if you like the knowledge, because that's helpful. Then we can always reach more people next time. So we're always working on that. Obviously, share with your colleagues and just join us again next time. We're really looking forward to that. Thank you very much. All the best for this end of the year season for next year, and I hope to see you all in one of our next webinars or panel discussions or in one of our online courses, and work on your fundraising together. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.